This is Rydo, and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Monday, November 30th, and we are here. Let's see. Well, where's my mouse cursor? Let's just start with that, and then click here and start that loading. I, in my efforts over the weekend to work on my server, managed to screw up my router configuration and load up a old settings, which may not be a terrible thing because somebody was definitely trying to hack into my router, and I don't know why they were being given access at all. I was trying very hard to make sure that the firewall would not allow external access to the SSH server, and yet something was bouncing a port back towards it. They were somehow connecting through external ports and then routing it, forwarding a packet somehow to from the outside to the inside to then try and break it more. What I didn't do, and I definitely could have done, is play some of this cup Grand Prix, which I don't know if I played more than one challenge of this. It really goes to show how my interest on this game, it cannot be anywhere as high as they wanted it to be. I'm just going to get rid of this. Like, there's no point in holding on to things that I'm just going to have to struggle to get through. So now we can play Forestcraft and try and win that way. So yeah, my congestion issue might pop up, although right now I can tell you I'm seeing no congestion issue at all. So maybe by taking a step back and loading in a month's older quality of service settings, I have configured it to maybe a lot, if not all, of the settings that I had changed, even though I tried to research these settings and I thought I was doing the right thing. Maybe they just made things worse. And so I really didn't lose a lot of progress there, but yeah, it may have been a blessing in disguise. What wasn't a blessing in disguise certainly was the nightmare that this weekend was for me as far as working on my server. Because dish hoppers are just not programmed well to do DLNA, their DLNA client to play back music and photos and videos is just not programmed well. I was trying to set up a secondary lower quality, and that's the real base of it, is it needs to be just lower quality MP3s than any other modern DLNA player. And this has been a problem probably for about 10 years, back when DLNA and Universal Plug and Play were actually things that anybody should be using. But you can't have two servers on two server programs on the same server hardware using the same server port easily. There is the idea of doing multi-tap or plugging in two physical Ethernet cards or network cards, but neither one of those worked for me at all, and so that created a huge mess of me trying to do that, to the point where I was fairly consistently for maybe 4 or 5 hours just breaking not only the network stack and all the networking software on the server, but also sending out enough bad garbage data to break the domain name server on my router. So I was having to figure out that, oh, I need to go and change, reset the router, reset the computer's network card, back and forth every time a mistake was made. And so it just created this terrible problem. And in that terrible problem, there was a cascading problem that I'm not sure exactly what happened, but it just messed up some settings for all the things I had done up until this point. So having Nextcloud set up, having Air Sonic set up, having the proxy server Nginx as the front end set up, like having Let's Encrypt set up, all of that started failing. Even the most basic service, which was the just system log server, was not working. Best I can tell, what happened is I had configured the system log server to use the Let's Encrypt certificates. The Let's Encrypt certificates could not connect to the internet and get the right files because of the internet being broken, and then that just borked everything else that then required the Let's Encrypt certificates to work. Inherently, what this boils down to is, while it would be nice to have encryption on the system log, the only way to do that would be to make, I think, a fake certificate, self-signed certificate that it never expires. And that might be better than nothing, and that might be a project for another day, assuming I have any more energy or thought into working on that. I'd rather kind of go forward and get the last 4 or 5 servers for the server programs to running and just be done with it. But yeah, it was a lot of 2 steps back, 1 step forward over the weekend. A lot of frustration and 0 as far as playing video games. I do think this weekend I will play more video games. It's also fair to say that over the weekend it was Black Friday, and right now is technically Cyber Monday. There's really no sales. The one thing I could say is if you're into making and being a maker, there's like a 15% store-wide sale of everything in stock at Adafruit, which, those being such a niche those being so niche as far as the audience there, it would be reasonable there to say you're probably not going to get a lot of sales for Adafruit items, but also like hard to justify certainly right now doing makerspace style or STEM projects. It's really hard to justify spending any money at all for anybody. Let's see. Yeah, and depending how things go in the future, any one of us, but just looking at my potential future even, there could be some point in a potential future, near term future, where things are just financially really, really bad. And certainly the concept of making a YouTube channel that would give you nice passive income has failed kind of miserably there. So I don't know what else I could really do and as far as making a YouTube channel that succeeds. I could certainly get into e-begging a lot, but in all honesty, if it does get to that point, then like I could put up a live video that says something like, well, I need 1,000 Patreons giving at least $3, $4 minimum. Otherwise, I have to potentially stop making content altogether, or become more likely just really flippant about making content. Or more flippant than I already am. And see, that's... Well, that might be the potential end of a YouTuber's career, a failed YouTuber's career like mine. It doesn't really appeal. It's not likely that a whole bunch of people are going to get together and actually support my channel like that. And if they were, they would have done it in much better times. So yeah, I've had a Patreon for at least 1.5 years, and the phrasing on my Patreon specifically says, "Don't give me money if you don't have the money to spare." And boy, was that prescient, because that was way before this current depression. Although, in all fairness, it's not like the economy has ever been great for middle class or lower class citizens in the United States or the world in a very long time. The stock market is often used as a indicator that the economy is good, when it really is not an indicator of the economy in reality, because most people don't own stocks, or they don't own much stocks at all. They may have just a few $1,000s at most in retirement funds. So it really is a terrible actual indicator of the actual health of an economy, and just the actual level of poverty. Let's see. Well, we are in a weird position here where I think I'm gonna run out of news fairly quickly, even more than I usually think that, and usually I'm proven completely wrong on that factor. But yeah, over the weekend there really wasn't a lot of video game news to happen, and so I think we're gonna cover it, and then let's just cover it at our normal attempt to get through it as quickly as possible pace. And then I think I want to reevaluate, and maybe we'll do the single player challenges on this, or maybe we'll just play a little bit more. Okay. Let's see. Summon a fairy. Deal 1 damage to enemy follower. So yeah, we'll just go through the video game news. This is really shocking, frankly. We still are at 0% dropped frames. The buffer is great. I just don't know what happened there. Like, I think my writer has been complaining about, it's detected a DNS rebinding attack, which probably that's what's going on. I wouldn't be surprised if my IP got on some list, or if this is just the specific time in which they are trying to hack everybody, because, you know, now would be the time, wouldn't it, that you would try to potentially compromise some people. Alright. I can do 5 and then another 5, 4, so.
You're done for. I'm ready for more.
that, 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 and that. Here we have a Gamatsu article. Omori for PC launches December 25th, described as a surreal psychological horror RPG. I like the art style on this drawing here. You can see it's definitely looks like it was drawn with crayons. I don't know how you get into a full game that way though. Like, that's the real question. Certainly is, does this just turn into an RPG Maker game with pencil graphics? It kinda looks like that. Yeah, I'm not sure that I really think there's something here. But I guess I really don't have to judge it, prejudging it. It would be really hard to have an animation style like that in a video game. You would have to make some kind of engine that is just specifically designed to take regular 3D models and rasterize them, I think would be the right term, to draw over them and stretch on them. And make it look like crayons. And we've seen some filters certainly in games that have done that, like the Borderlands filter and the way things look was probably not really groundbreaking technological, but groundbreaking certainly in the idea that not every RPG first-person shooter game or third-person shooter game, I think it actually has to look exactly like every other game. See, hit this, and then reduce damage from effects to 0. Okay, well then let's do this. I didn't actually need to do that. I should have evolved and killed one of them. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Ronistar or Ronister Adventure. I don't know how you pronounce that, really. It looks like it's a character drawn to look kind of like a Mario character, but it looks more like a kind of frustration platformer than what I would think a nostalgic Nintendo game should be. In all fairness, Mario Brothers, the lost levels of Mario, and of the original Mario 2 that are called the lost levels in the West, and there definitely are some points even in Mario 3 that are fairly frustration-based platforming, but in a weird way, later iterations in the Mario series has created the feeling that the original Mario games were easier than they were, or should be easier to be properly honored, I suppose is might be the best way to say that. Right, well, if I do this and then I evolve this and then I do this, and then I do this, then I go there, and go there, and then go there. Do that. Should have played that earlier. I thought this was the one that gave me ward, but clearly it doesn't. So I've Should have played this before I did all the other things. Oh well. She's like playing a cat deck. Interesting. At least a lot of the cards are cat girls. See, that's one of the weird things about having like a thematic deck in a game, in a collectible card game, is that you could certainly play a deck full of just cat girls and Shadowverse easily, or fairies, but really you're not likely to win with that. You need to be able to mix and match and play the best cards that are available. So it creates one kind of player that's playing for fun that is potentially always going to lose, and one player that's playing to win. Unfortunately, the playing for fun people, particularly in Shadowverse, are never rewarded. Like every single reward daily mission is built around either at least evolving a character, if not more likely winning an actual game. And even if you play on the unranked, you're not getting random victories where people are just playing for fun. You're still just playing against desperate people, often me, in that group, who want a victory but figure they might get one easier without playing ranked. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Rise of the Samurai in VR. The Steam sale is still going on. I suppose I should mention this is unfortunately just nothing. I did hear some numbers in general saying that like the number of people that actually went to stores for Black Friday was down like 52% in the United States, which really should have been 0%, frankly. But it is also kind of chilling to see that there was either one way you could look at it. There was 52% of excess in spending and shopping on Black Friday every year up until this point, or compared to last year. It was probably compared to last year, or there's 52% of people are not confident enough to go to stores, either financially confident or just medically confident, and that is the right attitude to take. Speaking of pandemics, here we have a game on Steam called Day of Vaccination, which I think Steam's going to have to really address games like this. It doesn't seem like this is even that bad of a game. It doesn't seem like this is as good of a game that I'd actually want to play it, but $10.99, English only. Top down, twin stick shooter, bullet hell shooter. Let's see. Do I want to recover play points, or do I want to summon this, or do I want to destroy something? I think we destroy something and hit that. Next we have a game on Steam called Paper Shooter, which is just an ugly first-person shooter trying to have a stickman aesthetic in 3D and be kind of a joke game. Early access, $3.19. That's an odd price, particularly. Next we have a game called Get Ogre It, where apparently the characters will pathfind towards you and eventually run you over, and you have to try and escape, which kind of feels like a just cheap clone of something Crypt of the Necrodancer. Alright, what do I want to do? Something here. And then should have played that first.
You're done for. Bad people are away.
Yeah, I don't see anything as far as get over it that would make that interesting enough of an experience where you're literally just walking around. Seems like you swap colors, and in swapping colors you switch between. Yeah, it seems like at some point you swap to a blue ogre, and at some points you swap to a pink human, and then in that sense you swap who's actually chasing after you, but somebody's always chasing after you. There's probably a reason why there aren't too many chase sequences in video games. That's just... It can be slightly interesting to have an action-packed chase sequence, but it also is potentially just going to be frustrating. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Hello from the Darkness, or From Darkness, which is an asset flip horror game with creepy faces that look at you and you have to run away from them. Early access, $5.99, English, Russian. Some of these low effort games really are just like, what if we took a game that a kindergartner might want to play on the playground, or something that a kindergartner in the old days might have wanted to play on the playground, and can we turn that into a digital something or other that we can sell? Because like a lot of these horror games are just hide and go seek, or peekaboo, or chase, or some combination of those, which is really simplistic, really not something that you could make into much of a game. Even some of the Minecraft mods, which are fairly popular, like, that are just hide and seek, and they straight up say they're hide and seek. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Air Wars VR, which looks like you are flying a jet plane. Any of these want to load? Apparently, I'm going to have to go back and adjust the quality of service again and start tweaking again, unfortunately, to get the images to load. This is early access for $24.99 and requires VR. I had watched the video here, and it didn't look particularly well polished. Like, the cutscene stuff here looks fine, but actually in the cockpit and seeing just how a lot of your vision is blocked, and how you're just looking at a panel that probably isn't going to be that interactive or interesting that you can see. I suppose if you were a cockpit pilot and you wanted to fly in a simulator, there might be a thought there, but also I'm sure every cockpit pilot in every military has way more accurate, polished simulators. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Chimera Puzzle Island, which is a pictocross game, but I do have to kind of applaud the way this looks. This looks like there's actual characters, actual text that's going on, an actual even story. This might be the merger of what was supposed to be an RPG and became a pictocross game, which I don't know if that isn't a great idea. $8.09 is a little expensive, certainly. for a Pictocross game, but I'm going to put this on the follow list because this definitely does feel like something I could put on the follow list or the wish list and say, well, there is probably a decent argument to play at least one Pictocross game out there, so let's play one that actually looks like it's interesting. And apparently the follow button's not working right now. The one thing I'd really like to see is, with going back a month on the settings on my router, I'd like to see if perhaps I was firewalling some element that was causing a lot of cookie consent pop-ups to happen. I'm not sure that's really the case. I think the GDPR is coming into full effect at the beginning of next year, 2021, and every single website is desperately trying to get people to click OK and consent to having their data scraped and collected. Which, while that may be very annoying to start seeing all these consent pop-ups, it might also open up a lot of people's eyes to just how much data was being extracted. I believe I heard at one point, like, your data is valued somewhere around like $52 to Google or Facebook or one of those big companies. That's pretty much how much money they are making by selling your data in aggregate to advertisers. Which, on the one hand, you could say, well, you're getting a lot of free services, although some of these free services on Google's and also tend to disappear and get worse over time. YouTube has gotten incredibly bad. The algorithm's gotten particularly bad now that I'm not seeing so many ads, but the ads were getting terrible too. There we go. Next, we have a game on Steam here called AVI, which looks like just a dark screenshot horror game. Low polygon, probably low effort. It's free. English. I will say I did start a little bit later today, and I do feel like I'm a little bit more awake than I have been in the past month or two. That has been certainly a lot of insomnia issues. So I'm glad for that, like, because it was getting fairly consistent there where I was just half asleep and going and a lot and not being able to really hold on to a mental thought as I lose my thought as I'm saying the sentence. It's still fairly hard to focus when you're trying to do 3D different things at the same time, or 2 different things at the same time. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Crazy Fun Ball, which just looks like a shape game, physics game of some sort. Doesn't look particularly appealing. $4.49 is laughable. English only. It's kind of like a 3D effort at several arcade games, which at the end of the day, that's not a terrible idea. If you were going to make a 3D effort on Arkanoid or a 3D effort on Pong, that there might be an idea to a game there. But I don't think that really is enough. Because at a certain point, Rocket League is a 3D effort to create something like Pong. And that's the level of the polish that you would really need to create. Okay. Let's see. Do we want to do this? And then this. And then this, I guess. And then the turn. Gamatsu has an article here. Wizardry voice actors are announced for iOS and Android. The latest entry in the long-running RPG series. I assume Wizardry. Oh, I guess it is VA, not voice actors. I thought they were talking about the voice actors. Okay, and here we have a creepy skull, so I'll take that off the screen and show what it is. This does just feel like a fantasy dungeon crawler game, which I definitely am not saying anything. There's nothing really different from what you're saying here, just a lot of numbers and some kind of ugly looking characters. That and that, and then the turn. Next we have a game on Steam called Reflecton, which I want to point out, I should take some responsibility here. Had I spent the weekend looking for new games coming out on Steam, I probably would have a lot more games to talk about, but that was also Thanksgiving weekend, so I don't feel like I made the wrong decision there. That is, however, going to pretty much put us to the point where we have about 15 more games to talk about. This doesn't support English, this game. It's $8.99, Japanese only. And it just kind of feels like it is a VR attempt at something like Pong. From the looks of it, I'm not sure if there's any more game to it than that, whether there's some music element or not. I don't think there is. There's just pounding music lines on the sides. Let's see. Next, Gamatsu has an article. Every day today's menu for the Imiya family is further delayed in Japan, no longer due out in 2020. I believe this is the Cooking Fate Stay Night spin-off game. There's a Shinron Kagura cooking game that I saw some footage of, and I was thinking about maybe getting that, but I don't know. Yeah. It did definitely feel like, even for a cooking game, being in the Shinron Kagura series, it's going to have some loot elements, so it probably would still be a little dangerous to put on YouTube. I just had the thought that the ultimate false promise I could make certainly would be to say, if at some point I decided I couldn't make any more content at all, the ultimate false promise to make would be to say that I was going to play a bunch of the adult games and at some point come back and describe what I'd seen. Right. I'm gonna play this, but I don't think it does anything. Gamatsu has an article here. Record of the Lotus War Light in Wonder Labyrinth Early Access Stage 3 and 4 update delayed to January 2021, which interesting. So there, for this PC game, Record of the Lotus War Deed Light in Wonder Labyrinth, that's a long title. They apparently are releasing it stage by stage. Yeah. I imagine the part of the false promise, if I was going to say I'm going to just go through my library and play all the adult things at my own leisure, and if I ever come back years later to my YouTube channel, I'll mention them. Which, that really wouldn't work. It would require me to just make footage and sit on the footage. Like, on one hand, I probably could play those games and very well might. On the other hand, if I don't have time to play the game, make the footage, and put it up, then I probably don't have time to play the game at all. Let's hit this one and hope that one's not immune to damage.
What an oath!
I told you not to rock the boat. Yeah.
Hit that.
Wait, that's it?
Yeah.
And hit that. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Nigel's Journey, a working day, which looks like it's a first-person shooter asset flip game. We haven't seen a lot of games like this where it is just showing like a lot of bodies on the ground and or showing just the player wander around an area shooting people. This is $12.74. Supports a bunch of languages. English, French, German, Spanish, Latin America, Portuguese, Brazil. That definitely feels like a decade or two ago. The way a lot of games had played in the past, where and been advertised at the past, is that they would have been heavily focused around the idea of selling themselves as a super violent game that is just all about the shooting and all about the violence.
You're done for.
There we go.
A baby bird. Gotta report this lickety split.
There we go.
For leaves to fall.
A lot of these characters talk way too much, and they need much shorter, piffy lines of dialogue. And maybe in Japanese, that translates a lot better, and they do say talk a little bit faster or say more in fewer sounds. But in English, you definitely have sound effects that start overlapping and start getting repetitive. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Holomas Z Notebook, which is tagged as a puzzle detective war game. And to me, it looks like it is either a very weird Japanese game, but my bet would be Chinese game trying to look like a weird Japanese game. Like, the video here, it's really not showing a lot, and you see in the video, you're seeing a lot of text on the screen in black backgrounds. English is not supported, $4.99. Chinese, yeah. Next, we have a game on Steam called Toutins, which looks, they're calling it a hidden object puzzle game. I don't see why it would be a hidden object game. There's nothing here that looks like hidden object game. This looks like a kid focused adventure game. $24.99. Norwegian full audio. Interesting. We don't see a lot of those. I'm gonna put this on the follow list, but there is definitely a question, certainly on the price there and whether you're actually going to get a decent value. Play that. And play that. And then let's see.
It won't be long now. This is the only way out of the woods. That's strange.
Hit that one. Hit that one.
Wait, that's it?
In the turn. It's not particularly video game related, but the actor who physically wore the Darth Vader suit passed away. He was not the actor who did the voice, nor was he the actor who was unmasked at the point that they did unmask Darth Vader. But yeah, more and more Star Wars actors and just actors of movies of that era are going to pretty much pass away because they would have been either really, really old or really, really young. Well, they could have been in the middle of those two things. But even the actors who were really young, like Luke, the actor who played Luke, is now fairly old. So yeah, that's just gonna happen. And there's certainly, I think, a level of a lack of interest in a lot of movies once you start to get into the late 90s. Maybe you can get a few things, but if an actor who was in let's see, like one of the Twilight movies, one of those actresses, or which was really popular at the time, if one of those actors passed away right now, it would be certainly a tragedy because they'd be so young, but it also would almost certainly not be anywhere as impactful to society in general. Even fans of the Twilight series more than likely have moved on, and that is kind of the problem of perhaps targeting young female audience versus young male audience, in the sense that males tend to be more obsessive and lock into fandoms for their entire lifetime, where females audiences, generally speaking, tend to have a little bit more sense, and while they may lock into some fandom mania in a short year or two process, they eventually grow out of it. Generally speaking, of course, there's always exceptions. But I also wouldn't be surprised if the movie theaters have zero care for any kind of back-end fandom, because even at the moment, Disney is struggling to fully monetize the fans of, that's a nasty way to say it, to fully monetize the fans of Star Wars, but that's exactly how they would say it and see it. 1, 2, 3, and hit. Next we have a game called Attack of the Mecca the Ultimate Donkey, which is just a side shooter with a joke aspect to it. 99 cents, English only. Weirdly, that's like the only cheap low effort game we've seen so far today. Everything else has been particularly expensive. Still have not dropped a single frame. Man, I must have just really borked up some settings. Either that or just nobody is online on Cyber Monday, which maybe that is the case. Next we have a Tech Raptor article, Stargaze review, which, let's see what they have to say. Is this a VR game? It kind of looks like a VR game. I vaguely recall something like this. They gave it an 8.0. Stargaze is a fantastically unique approach to space exploration featuring inventive puzzles, unique worlds, and a charming personality. Let's see. The pros are the original interpretation of its source material. So what is it based off of? Super endearing aesthetic and unique approach to space exploration. The con, and there's only one, which is weird for a Tech Raptor article. They usually stretch to make sure they have 3 pros and 3 cons. The con is it doesn't make the most of VR capabilities. Stargazer's storybook world takes inspiration from The Little Prince without at all stepping into the borders of adaptation. So, is this based on The Little Prince? Did they come out and admit that? That's an interesting idea. I don't know if The Little Prince as a storyline for a video game works, though, just because you open yourself up to the sad story that is The Little Prince if you try to adapt something from that. There was a attempt to kind of make a movie slightly loosely based on The Little Prince. There was an animated movie and that went nowhere. I watched that and it was just like, okay, well, this is a different story completely, and it really doesn't have anything to do with anything with the original. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Arcland, which this is about the worst way to try to make a retro arcade looking game by taking up massive amounts of screen space that I imagine you cannot zoom in, because if you could zoom in there would be at least one screenshot of that. $1.99, English only. Yeah, that's gonna be a no for me. There we go.
What an oath.
Might be actually able to win here, but I'm not gonna hold my breath. Tech Raptor has a review here for Immortals Phoenix Rising, which this definitely looked like a Kid Icarus game in all but name. So the question is, will it play like that? Let's see, we got an official trailer here. Let's jump around this and see what the trailer looks like here. You got flying creatures, demons. You have this lady. She grabs the sword. And when she pulls it, she doesn't immediately grow wings, which is what I was kind of expecting. You don't get a lot of stories where there are kids or it's a land just besieged with monsters and the humans are on the edge of nearly dying. This feels a lot more like a Shadow of Colossus game where you're going to spend a significant portion of the game not having the ability to fly. So, feels like it might be slightly deceptive. It's just funny, they're thinking here, but I'm not getting any drop frames. Like, my network seems to be perfect. Cool. Let's see. Here we have a screenshot of Prometheus. Here we have another screenshot. Here you can see him flying. Flight combat is going to be difficult in almost any game. It's never been really worked on. It's never going to be really polished enough without people working on it more. Apparently this is Aphrodite. Here we have something that probably is Medusa. But they gave it a 7.0, which is a shame because I was hoping for a better.
What an oath!
Okay. What does this one do?
It might be dry, but it's home.
Okay. Hit that. And hit that. So they gave Immortals a Phoenix Rising a 7.0. They say it's a vast and entertaining adventure with excellent gameplay. Unfortunately, the storyline and quest systems are weak and the game feels rushed. It's a fun game, but one that lives in Breath of the Wild's shadow. Well, for a PC gamer, that still might be good enough to justify sticking to, frankly. The pros are satisfying and rich combat mechanics, good. Traveling that huge map is a joy, and there's rewarding puzzles. Cons, there's a terrible quest system, there's a distinct lack of polish, and there's repetitive gameplay. Right.
What an oath! Home sweet home.
This is gonna wreck me. Because the one time I have this character on the field, I can't really use him.
To a new world. I need more cuddles.
Deal 3 damage to all enemies.
Seek what is not there.
Can't be targeted by enemies or
Awaken, for the end is
attacked. Well, how could I evolve this when I have no evolve points? I can't. Can I? See, next we have a game on Steam here called Finding Brenda, Episode 1, which looks like it's an asset flip game where you maybe play as a zombie, which there might be a thought there. Coming soon, English and German. If you were going to play as a zombie,
Thus, the world
there's a
a fitting end.
real question as far as just how you see that work and how you make that work. Like, see, I guess I could have attacked that, and then I could have had 4 of these, and then I could have done that, and then it would have only killed one of those.
cycles on.
Come on!
I shall give birth.
We're just playing the same characters back and forth. No fairies in my hand.
This armor's turning out pretty useful.
Oh, come on! Ow! You're strong.
If you were going to play as a zombie, it almost certainly has to be kind of a jokey game. It can't be that serious. Or if you try to go serious, you're going to have to be very, very careful on the level of seriousness there. Like, you're going to have to break down the player's natural instinct to simply let the zombie they're controlling starve to death or run off a cliff. You're going to have to impose upon them a stamina bar that would be incredibly frustrating, as far as just, this is the reason why you've got to continue to eat and eat and eat and eat. Alright, well, we competed and we lost. So let's come over here to Unlimited and Forestcraft and start playing regular. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Sega has unveiled a before seen Venus handheld, which frankly, I think in a weird way, I feel like Sega is literally just going through its offices, cleaning up what it has, and like packing up to shut the place down. Like, it's kind of hard to believe that Sega is gonna be doing that much. With all of their arcades shut down because of the pandemic, and Sega hasn't been done hasn't been a great game developer in a long time. So like, this guy is just basically giving you the explanation on how they named a lot of their systems, which, you know, like, or at least code named them, like the Sega Genesis, and explaining that I guess a lot of these were developed and named after planets, which at a certain point, I suppose they may have very well run out of planets if they had kept on making consoles. Regardless, I believe this is the unit that has never been seen before, which very well means there's just like one prototype. It looks a lot like the Game Gear, so it might have been a mid-tier concept after the Game Gear or before the Game Gear. See, that in a weird way that might be video game history, but in another way it's just like, I don't know, I'm personally not really in the mood to care. As someone who wasn't ever a Sega fanboy, it's like, it seems weird, but it's not crazy. I feel like there's unlikely to be any happy revelations in the video game industry as far as past history. Any feel-good stories probably would have long since happened and been released, and all that's left is just the muck that should be forgotten to the annals of history, like just negative stories and people coming back and late to the party making accusations and such. Let's see.
Hey, let's play. Time to dance. I'm out of spirit. Stay away. They're picking on me. Hey, let's play.
More recent history, I suppose. We have a Attack Raptor article here. Super Meat Boy, 10 years later, still a rare indie gem, which in a weird way is just kind of a sad reality as far as where indie games went after having a boost of publicity and more advertisement and promotion from mainstream video game journalists than they probably deserved. The Indie Game the Movie in particular making Super Meat Boy a lot more prominent. And sure, there have been good indie games since Super Meat Boy in the past decade, but also nothing really that amazing. Nothing that people would make an Indie Game the Movie 2 around, as it were. I feel like also having a documentary crew make a movie around indie game development is totally wrong, because now pretty much anybody could do that by themselves, just via YouTube. In a lot of ways, that's what the Yandere Simulator developer is really doing, is just giving monthly updates on whatever programming he's doing. And I imagine that there are some indie developers out there that are straight up just programming code and live streaming it. That'd be a weird thing, to potentially program code while live streaming it, but honestly, you probably would not create much of a problem there. You could always have like secret header files that aren't being shown, which could be probably fairly easily reverse engineered, but not worth the effort. And if you were live streaming that you were typing code, then someone would have to either scan that frame by frame, the footage, to type the code back in. And again, it probably wouldn't be worth it. In a lot of ways, that's also very unstructured, so maybe there wouldn't be a lot of demand to see someone directly code compared to someone giving a weekly update. There is one person that kind of directly codes and does a weekly update at the same time, and he doesn't really show his code that much, or even really focus on that. That probably does make a better stream. Yeah, if I was to try and stream everything I do messing with my server, not only would that reveal a lot of secret information, it would just like make my server completely insecure. It would be incredibly just poor entertainment and unstructured, boring footage. Like, what I do in my home lab is very much experimentation on the science level, and then the experimentation then has to be compiled into results and released as a lesson or as a paper in science, and that would be where the work would double effectively, because you'd have to go and figure out what I would have to figure out what I had programmed, what I had done, and to be able to accurately describe it. My hopes to be better at recording and documenting what I'm working on have yet to be engaged. I still have a slight chance that I might be able to do something like that, but this weekend is kind of also a great example of a situation where I spent at least half the weekend barking up the wrong tree, so there's total room for failure in a scenario like that. And somebody would have to work their way through all of that and figure out what is the good information versus what is the bad information. And certainly you might need to do 3, 4, 5 times more research to figure out why something worked and why it's the right method, if it's the right method, which often I imagine my solutions are kludges together, and in IT in general a lot of solutions are just kludges together, and that there is highly likely a better way to do things, but you won't know it, or it will be just not worth the effort to implement it.
Do you know the eternal voice? Oh, come on! Oh, come on!
Okay. This is gonna kill me every turn. Do I have anything I can do? I could do this on the 10th turn. I can do this next turn. But these guys are going to do 6 damage.
More cuddles.
If he can get back up to 30
I'll love you down to the bone.
skeletons.
I'll be home soon.
Okay.
Hey, let's play. Yeah. No more corpses.
Tech Raptor has a review here for Cronus Before the Ashes, which looks like it might be a fantasy kind of game, but actually more of a post-apocalypse game. Interesting. It does seem to kind of go between a few different directions. Here you've got these big kind of monsters. They give it a 7.0 too. Yeah, it's probably no coincidence that this is the week after Black Friday that these games are coming out, or yeah, I guess the weekend of Black Friday that these games are coming out. Okay. Let's do this. And then kill that. And then see, go ahead and hit that one. And that one.
I'll live again.
And that one. Go ahead and play that. Go ahead and evolve it.
You're done for.
I can win next turn
You're mean.
if they don't pull off any strategy. That's too crazy. Because I can play this and reduce the health to 6 and then attack. Tech Raptor says Chronos Before the Ashes is an interesting game, but it's not a consistent one. Its world is occasionally fascinating, some mechanics are quite interesting, and its general theming adds a lot to the universe. That being said, it offers plenty of ideas that it fails to deliver on, and could do with a little more to make it really stand out. The pros are an interesting world building, age mechanic is great, occasionally quite challenging puzzles, and immersive sound. Cons are mediocre combat and an RPG system that is a little too bare bones. Age mechanic. Does that mean you go to different ages at different times? Okay. We're about to lose if we're not careful.
There you are, my little trespasser. What an oath.
Darling, I'll be home soon. Do you know the eternal
I'm scanning the article here, trying to see what the age mechanic is. It could also be the character's age.
Hush, little baby. Don't say a word. I've seen them.
4 more skulls and he'll wreck me. Okay. I've actually won.
Everything decays.
Because I can evolve this.
Bear the suffering
I
of
can
them to
attack
suffer,
that.
to pain.
And then I can attack that.
You're too strong.
I guess it's that the character ages, because it says, like your character, Cronus itself has has aged somewhat poorly, whilst the puzzle's still fresh and great. Combat is mediocre. Is this an older game? This is an older game. I don't recognize it. Let's see. Let's battle again. Gotta stick with Forestcraft. Maybe we'll get some quick disconnects. Gamma Sutra has an article. A Saudi Arabian charity, MISK, has acquired a 33.3% stake in SNK. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, purchased also a 33.3% stake in it through his charity. Okay, so apparently it is his charity. I was going to make the baseless accusation that it was more than likely that this charity had bought it for the prince, but they're saying directly that they did it on the up and up. It would have also been fairly weird if 66.6% of the company had been bought. I suppose it's also worth mentioning that SNK was rebranded in 2016 after being acquired by Chinese investors and has yet to comment on the deal publicly. So SNK has been basically dead since 2016, which honestly it's probably been dead a lot earlier than that. As far as an actual video game company. And now it just feels like money is changing hands to own the licenses to SNK fighting games that people don't really care about. I wouldn't be surprised if what happens is they try to have a SNK themed fighting tournament in Saudi Arabia and around in other places around the world as a way of potentially gaining influence and celebrity. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if we start to see Middle Eastern countries and just a lot of countries trying to have Olympic style events that completely are framed around the concept of replacing the Olympics or being better than the Olympics. Chick Raptor has an article here. Doom Eternal rips and tears its way to Switch on December 8th. Or you could just say it's coming to the Switch on December 8th instead of getting cutesy with it. Let's see. This costs 2. So I'm going to take it at that discounted price. Now I'm going to hit it there. Then go 1, 2, and then play that. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Fall Guys developer Mediatonic has opened a new UK studio in Leamington Spa. I think we had already heard about this, but alright. In a weird way, Fall Guys and probably Among Us both are on the verge of losing their fad popularity to the whatever next big fad game comes out. And I think as far as the schools all around the world, everything is just up in question as far as how schools will go and how much free time kids will have compared to an average year. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Algebra Ridge. It's actually a little surprising that we haven't seen more cases of low effort, quickly made educational games being put on Steam, which is pretty much all this is. What's funny, I would say here is 7 plus 5 is not really what I would consider algebra. I think generally that more falls under the category of simple math in my mind, and algebra has to have missing variables of import. Certainly you could say 7 plus 5 equals x and turn it into something that sounds like algebra, but it probably technically does fall under algebra, but it definitely wouldn't. If I was going to do algebra 101, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be very surprised if they were asking me 7 plus 5. This game is selling for $9.99, English only. Yeah, nothing here. It really would be like the perfect time for Nintendo to come out with like a Mario teaches algebra, Mario teaches words type games. Like, they could definitely boost their online service that way. Gematsu has Atelier Rydo 2, Lost Legends, and the Secret Fairy. Digital Deluxe Edition costumes have been displayed in gameplay. So here you have the band of the characters. I believe this is the main girl who was shown in Atelier 1 a lot, and I believe all of these groups of friends were younger, and so now they've kind of grown up. Either that or they've managed to not have the one character. Like here she is. So yeah, I probably should try and play Atelier Rydo 1. Like, it definitely has the appeal. I could certainly see a bigger interest in playing Atelier than something like Monster Hunter, which is just a little too exhausting on the face of it, and it's just going to be fighting characters. They really went crazy with the costume packs, but heck, that is Japanese games in a nutshell, isn't it? I always kind of think it's a shame that these DLC costumes exist, though. It would make a lot more sense if there was 3 competing standards at most of just kind of open standards, don't have to be open source programs that imported 3D models and costumes. And they're probably at the core of them, if you could decrypt a video game, there probably are just like 3 standards as far as anybody could have a costume and anybody could put it in any game that they cared about, they wanted. But unfortunately, that's not the open source way that is the open source way that has not been embraced by the closed source game developing community, of which is almost all of the gaming development community. But yeah, it would certainly be nice if I went and bought a Sonic game and with that came the default costume of Sonic, and then if I wanted to, I could put that in a Mario game. It would also open the door to people understanding mods, which we still have a fairly high problem of the general populace not understanding that games can be modded to effectively show or do anything. So it is very possible that something that was not approved by the game developer looks like it was approved by the game developer and put into the game, which is what exactly, to my understanding, happened with the hot coffee mod. Although I think there may have been some internal content there. I don't think all of it was there. TechRaptor has an interesting article here. No more PlayStation 5s are getting shipped to Australia this year. Which are alright. Yeah, I doubt this has anything to do with animosity between Australia and Japan, although that tends to be the case for some of this stuff. Or probably even too much with as far as the excessive censorship that happens on games in Australia, or any conflict that the US might have, the US branch of Sony Interactive Entertainment might have with Australia. I imagine that it really is just a case of the shipments are not able to be fulfilled. Next, we have a game on Steam here called Alien World Millionaire, which looks like it's a Mario Party attempt of the game, but really it's just a Chinese kind of asset flip game that goes all over the place. Early access, English not supported, $1.79, Chinese only. I kind of always live in fear that at some point I am gonna end up just start claiming almost every bad game is from a Chinese developer, and that will stop being the case, and then I'll just look like I'm just spouting off baseless anti-Chinese game development bias. But yeah, that's not the case yet. Certainly. But that is in part why you have to stay up with the current affairs of the video game world if you want to be informed enough to be part of the dialogue.
Let's go to the ends of the earth. The power of nature.
A fitting end. Don't hurt me. Hey, let's play.
See, if I evolve one of these,
It won't be long now.
it's not gonna save me.
Bad
Like,
people are evil. Stay
because you
away.
go and clash that and it dies, and so.
They're picking on me. Hey, let's play.
TechRaptor has a review here for the game Empire of Sin. I believe this is kind of an XCOM game, if I recall correctly, in which you're playing as bootleggers back in Prohibition era type mobsters. They gave it an 8.5. That's a fairly high rating for a game in general, let alone one coming out right now. Seriously, is there anything else we can do besides play Forestcraft? Runecraft, I suppose. Let's try Runecraft. TechRaptor says it's a refreshingly deep and customizable turn-based tactics game that lets you reign supreme in the 1920s criminal empire. The pros are fantastic character customization optimizations. The economy and world building is an enjoyable process, and open world style allows much more freedom in decision making. The cons is the polish seems lacking during combat, and large wars can feel sluggish due to forced combat. But once again, 8.5. Gamatsu has an article here. The Good Life launches in the summer of 2021. This is the, I believe, Swery game, where you are basically playing as this girl who's just kind of trying to get her life straight, I think. And she, I think, turns into a cat at night. And also, this I believe was the game where he wanted to make her have to buy feminine healthcare products and just pay for her for general life needed groceries and expenses, which it's a weird sweary game, definitely, from the description there. I'm not sure there's actually enough of a game, though. That's the real question, and I don't think until I start seeing reviews I'll get the answer there. Is there really an adventure here, or is there really something to discover? Are you just doing normal human things that are as boring as normal human things tend to be? And this very well might be a case of them, of Swery trying to make an argument around the idea of learning just to appreciate the good life, the standard experience, coming from someone who almost certainly never experienced the standard experience in Japan or otherwise, considering how he's managed to become a niche, well-known developer with enough clout to get a game like this funded and made, and enough clout to get people to actually play it. Because on the description of it in general, this would not make it past most people's smell test. Apparently, according to Aztec, which is a CPU equipment manufacturer, liquid cooling manufacturer, today is also the Computer Security Day, and they put a picture here of someone figuring out my password with a sad dog, which, yeah, I guess today would be the day to remind people to be secure and not get swept up in sales and going to sites they've never heard of or that look fishy, and be very careful. I couldn't imagine a better day to have a computer security day. You could probably average out like the first day that students get into schools, and that might be a good day to talk about like computer security and passwords, but that's about it. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Tiny Build sinks 3 million into secret neighbor developer Hologryph. So let's see. They make it another game called Party Hard 2, apparently. Yeah, I'm really not sure if Secret Neighbor is gonna manage to become as big of a success as it feels like it is going to need to be, considering how they keep doubling down on it. It's one thing for the first game to have been popular and to take that popularity and move on to your next project, but to make your next project also Secret Neighbor themed, and the next project after that seemingly also Secret Neighbor themed, if I recall correctly. And I feel like they may have even tried to sign a deal for a cartoon or a movie. Here we have a game on Komatsu. Re-Legend launches spring 2021 with its first Switch gameplay. Which, okay. This looks like a RPG game. Playing an RPG on the Switch gives you that portability. I don't know if that really is enough. though. Yeah, I really... I'm not sure I'd want to play even some of the best like RPGs or Diablo type games on the Switch. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Universal Studios Japan will open the Super Mario Nintendo World in February, which, boy, did they just get terribly timing on that. Like, I imagine a lot of people will be interested in visiting these parks once they can, but February very possibly is not going to be any better for pandemic reasons. Like, this, I believe, is probably a real-world depiction of what it looks like and not a animation, which mostly we'd been seeing just animations. When you start to look at the scale of things, this is a standard height, which means these are about 3 times the height of a human, which means a lot of this stuff is really bigger than it looks. But in all fairness, I don't think there's a ton here. Like 4, maybe 5 things. I would assume if you were to go to, if you were Japanese, I imagine they're going to try very hard to not have you visit it if you don't speak Japanese. You'll probably be booked up, but I would assume that this is a half-day area of stuff. I would be very surprised if you could make a good 8 hours or 10 hours of entertainment, standing in lines even, to see all these rides. I imagine you can probably just see everything and be done. There's very possibly several theaters in different alcoves here, and probably some restaurants and things like that also. But I imagine the theaters are going to be heavily used to get lots of people to sit down and watch some longer running event. But then also, I guess, if they want to move people through the entire procession, then they might have to think about finding more room. Which, in fairness, there is a decent amount of room. If you're coming in here and then it wraps all the way around and up and then back out here, there's a lot of room that could happen. Then there could be underground things that take you downward. There could be elevators that take you higher. But this is hardly a Disney World or Disneyland. And that's probably true for a lot of the Universal Studios around the world, though, is that they are smaller affairs, more local things. Let's see, there's no other pictures showing up. Let me reload the page just to make sure that's the case. I imagine there'll be some YouTuber that manages to go and talk about it. At some point in the future, at least.
For the world. Someday, true peace. This holy fragment.
Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Eye of the Beholder, which might be a horror game that's just in a lot of shadow. Calling it a documentary VR 20-minute beta experience, free to play if you have VR, English only. So yeah, you might want to check this out since it's free. I'm not gonna bother to put it on the follow list though, since it's a free game.
Spell looks so sweet, you'll get cavities.
Tech Raptor has an article here, Pokemon Go December 2020 events revealed, which, yeah, I don't know specifically what you could be doing for Pokemon Go.
You were done for.
We had the blog here as the top releases of 2020. Let's see. I think we already talked about these, but we'll go over them again. Star Wars Squadrons, Baldur's Gate 3, esports, FIFA. Let's see. Do this.
Talisman master someday.
Do this. Do this. Follow this.
Someday, the true peace.
Let's see, we have the Survivalist, Second Extinction, Torchlight 3. I'm actually surprised Torchlight 3. Let's look at that. Jackbox Party Pack 7, RuneScape, Age of Empires, Noida. Let's look at that. I think I know what that is. Crown Trick. Let's look at that.
Never failed a class before.
In Silence. A game apparently from Turkey. Are they breaking these down now from different countries? Like Amnesia Rebirth in Sweden, Solstar Crown of Magistar in France. Apparently they are breaking this down by country. That's not going to work. The Outer Worlds. Zhonyang Sword. Little Dark is UK. Here's another one from Sweden. Top free games, you have Eternal Return, Black Survival, Action Timing, Soul Worker. I feel like Soul Worker is another one of these Korean games that's going to have lewd characters. Not a lot there. Let's do this. Evolve.
You don't stand a chance.
This is the wheel. Blinding light.
Do that. And do that.
Did I not pray hard enough?
Here, if we look at Torchlight 3, you can see it's mixed reviewed. So, even as a game that sold very well, it isn't getting well received. Which, honestly, that makes a great argument for just not going any further. I don't have to play the sequel to a game just because I played the original game. I think it makes a lot of sense to just not go any further with the Torchlight series. Here's Noida. It's that physics chemical one game that is on my following list, but I'm still having trouble deciding whether I really would want to play it. Crown Trick is already on my wish list. I recognize this game. I didn't think that it was a game that would have gotten any upgrades if any of these images are going to load. So I'm a little surprised by that. Yeah. It looks like it's kind of a dungeon crawler roguelike game.
Light for all the world.
Okay. I'm gonna lose. He is In Silence. It's a horror multiplayer game, early access. I think we've seen this one. We've definitely seen a lot of games like that. And then one of them wasn't even available in my region, almost certainly the Korean one or Japanese one. I did look into coffee a little bit, KOFI, and honestly, if I felt like it would be helpful, I probably should make an account. Apparently, you get no fees whatsoever from direct donations via coffee, which seems to be very, very different from the experience with YouTube, or I think Twitch also, or Patreon. Inherently, even Patreon's name recognition doesn't probably account for much. So I don't think you're gaining a lot by specifically sticking to only Patreon, but you probably should still have it. Alright, so we're an hour and 46 in. I'm gonna go through my Twitter feed. And then I don't know what we're gonna do. Because I literally don't have a clue. Like it's like theoretically we should keep on playing. We should keep on playing and try and get victories. But that very well could take another hour, and I'm not really enthused around that idea. That doesn't sound particularly fun. Honestly, I would like to just finish streaming and get back to a story about my uncle. That way we can finish that game. Or I could go through the story sections, and we could try that, I suppose, after this. And that's about the only thing I think I could do otherwise. Because launching a different game and live streaming some other game, it's not really ideal. And see, like, the only thing that was even on my Twitter feed is we have a game that's come out called Miss Santa's Gift Hunt, which is an RPG Maker game, which looks pretty terrible, for free, but then there's a bunch of DLC. Let's play. And then Daedalic, which I've had forgotten that they are working on the Lord of the Rings Golem. Let's see. Kind of had forgotten about that completely. We'll look at that page. But they tweeted out that tomorrow they're starting a 24-day giveaway adventure calendar Eventorama. Follow the daily tweets for the next day at 7 p.m. Central Eastern Standard Time, or I don't know what CEST actually stands for. But if you follow them, you have a chance to win a lot of great gifts. We wish you the best Christmas season you can have. Stay safe and stay healthy. So they're going to give away Steam codes probably to a bunch of older Daedalic games. And here's Gold from the Deponia series, and either Harry from the Edna and Harry series. And then down here it says, obviously we meant 7 p.m. CET, 24 hours from this original post, which, okay, that would be about noon Central Time, I guess, in America. Which that's somewhat reasonable if you want to try and win awards and things like that. You would think that there would be a lot of that going on here, where in the lack of funding, people would potentially try to have try to win more things, and then people could take advantage of that and have a lot more contests. But I think inherently almost all contests are designed to drive someone to actually spend money somehow, so it may very well just be the case that there's no point to have a contest if it's gonna cost you money.
Help me, fairy. No.
This is certainly the time in which running a corporation, running a business is going to do one of two things, and I think a lot of business owners are just not used to the idea of trying to create goodwill or good experiences for their customers anymore. They haven't done that in a very long time, frankly. So either you're in a scenario where let's just say you're going to succeed or fail, and let's just say that it's just a dice roll, a coin flip. Nothing you do is going to affect whether you succeed or fail if you're running a business right now. Now that's not true, but for this hypothetical mental experiment, just assume that there's going to be two ways you can handle that. Either you try to create goodwill and a good lasting memory in the minds of people, of your customers and your clients, or you completely ignore that concept and you just try to milk the customers as much as possible, as far as possible, for every single dime you can get out of them.
Why are you here? Help me,
See, I
fairy.
guess I should have attacked with
I've
that
been
first,
lost forever.
and then that, and then that, I guess. See, I could have had one more fairy. So I could see, if I was running a business, more than a small YouTuber, to try and just be as kind and create as good of an experience as in the minds of people. This really would be the time in which you're gonna have to say, look, we're gonna at best break even, and at worst we're going to lower our standards, and we're gonna lower the experience so much that people are never gonna come back in the first place. And at a certain point, it might very well be that a lot of businesses, maybe a significantly high percentage of businesses, just go bankrupt. But if you were the manager of a bankrupt business and you treated everyone nicely, you're building up the potential, like, employees that would maybe work for you in a future second job, second business, or you're going the other way with that, and you're potentially irritating and overworking your employees to the point where they hate you and would never give you the time of day.
My beauty will and so vile you are.
So it really is a scenario right now where you have to ask yourself, are we going to are we going to be a crab in the bucket pulling everybody down, or are we going to just do our best to lift everybody up? And unfortunately, if your only interest is money now, money as soon as possible, then you will turn into a crab in the bucket pulling everyone down. If you can say, look, the finances here just aren't going to happen, which it's pretty obvious they aren't, then then you have to think about what value can you extract without oops. Disable voice and then skip. We're not watching the actual story here. I'm just trying to go through all of this. And so she's a Polocraft character. This new story does seem to be recalling back to the events of the previous story, so they're starting to tie it in now that we have a Polocraft character again, which it does seem like it is literally just the Polocraft character that wraps up these stories. Here's that game Lord of the Rings Golem as it's in development, and yeah, it looks like it's a stealth adventure fantasy story rich game that's coming out with English full audio at some point. This is a big ask for a Daedalic game, certainly. Like this trailer is promising a lot. In a weird way, if this Golem game comes out, the other Lord of the Rings games, the Shadow of War series, has now just been completely abandoned. I'm not sure that we always need new Lord of the Rings games coming out, but it's a little surprising that it isn't more of a consistent experience as far as Lord of the Rings games coming out. Of course, I think if I was to guess, Warner Brothers probably owns the rights to Lord of the Rings too, so with recent mergers and shifts there, I wouldn't be surprised if we see the Lord of the Rings games stopping from happening.
I'm gonna make history.
You watching?
And then I think we're gonna probably run out of things to even show. Let's see, Daedalic Entertainment here in general, just to give a general idea of what games they might give out. It's probably not going to be their biggest things that they kind of published. Suicide of Rachel Foster is possible. The anniversary edition of Ed and Harvey, The Breakout, which I covered the original version of that, and I was like, alright, I didn't like it that much. Felix the Reaper almost certainly going to be given away because it wasn't that popular. Holy Potato, State of Mind wasn't that popular. Air might be given away. It's not that good of a game either. I covered that. I bet Kin Follett's Pillars of Earth does not get given away. Although, in all fairness, they could easily give away one copy of every game they have. There's a lot of games here that you wouldn't think were Daedalic games. Franz Kafka, Relaxing VR Mahjong. Like, the last game that I recognized that they had published was like Silence. So, it's been like 4 years since I've paid real attention. Crazy Machine 3, Deponia Doomsday. They'll almost certainly give away all the Deponia games. Zanzara, The Hidden Portal. Haven't played that. Wow. This definitely goes to show there's some games. Ant's Quest ended on a sour note and has obviously no continuation for it. Not by the looks of it.
Is in my orbit.
Okay. Let's see. Here's a game I haven't played. Here's a game I haven't played. Wow, and there definitely are large collections of games I haven't played. I don't think I've played Randall's Memory, Deponia the Complete Journey, which doesn't include Doomsday. And I wouldn't be surprised if they make more Deponia games. Journey of a Roach, haven't played that. And then Harvey the Breakout. Goodbye Deponia, not needed because it's included in the Complete Journey. Night of the Rabbit, I haven't played and probably should play, but Chaos and Deponia not needed. Harvey's New Eyes, haven't played. And here's the original Deponia games, but I thought I had the original Deponia game. The Deponia Daedalic has in the past been somewhat bad about having multiple versions of the same thing available for purchase, and not particularly making it obvious that that's what's going on, or that that's the scenario.
Listen to my song.
Right.
Check out my fancy footwork.
My beautiful ballad. Grammar sucks.
I suppose if I lose here, I'm just gonna call it a day. Like, because here's the problem, is the only thing I can think of doing, instead of just enjoying a short day and taking a break, would be to go through my wish list and
Know my master?
kind of just do some theoretical shopping when not really doing any shopping as far as the sale.
Ballads forever.
Like, it would be kind of silly to go through the follow list in any way, or go through my game library and just brag about what games I have, because that really is just would just be a sad experience of me showing off what I have and also admitting that I have just way too many games and not enough time ever. Plus, if I'm gonna lose here, then that inherently means it's gonna take me a lot of attempts to get through the single player experience. Like, we never really got through the other single player experience. So, like, yeah, the first challenge there, like, they are not consistent as far as these challenges. But, you know, I've never really had the time to come in here and finish these two, and then this challenge here feels just impossible to beat. I don't feel like I've gotten particularly better at anything. And see, yeah, the only thing I could think of doing here is just going through the ranked order, which frankly my ranked order is not that great as far as games. And are we filtering? What are we filtering? Nothing? Well, then why is there not a number 1 here? Showing all types, filtering, nothing, right? So there's like no reason here that Doom 3 would be at the top. Star Wars Racer makes sense. developer commentary DLC is a weird one. Catherine Classic. Bob As You is one I do actually want. Simon Kagura, Plague Tale Innocence, Leisure Suit Larry games. Even at $8.99 though, that's still fairly expensive. Battlefront Classic is really just filling in and making sure I have like all the Star Wars games. Atelier games of older spin-offs versions. These are all DX endings, so they probably are DX games. And they really don't have that much connection to the Atelier Ryza series. The Master Chief Collection, sure, makes sense. I should play that. A lot of these Disney games kind of make sense if I'm going to ever run out of kids games to cover, Lego games. Layers of Fear. I'm questioning whether I want to play any of the Dead Rising games. I do want to get Black Mesa. Indivisible is a weird one. I do want to play it, but also now there's this big controversy around it, and I wasn't 100% certain that it was ever really finished. The Pedestrian is a little too expensive. Journey I want to play, but even that's a little expensive being as old as it is. Code Vein I want to play, but that's too expensive. Little Misfortune I do want to play. A little expensive. That comes up. It makes a lot of sense to play Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch remastered, because if I play this, then I have a kid-friendly game I can cover, and it's an RPG, JRPG game to cover. There's some Darksiders 3 content that's mixed, and I would have to have Darksiders 3, Resident Evil 3, which I'd like to play Resident Evil 2. Some of these games that recently came out. Not sure about Digimon. It almost would be smarter to not play Digimon and instead play Ni no Kuni. River City Girls I want, but not discounted. That's often a problem, certainly with games during sales too, is that there is just a percentage of games that are either not discounted enough, like this one that's only 30% off, or games that are just not discounted at all. Doom 64 for $1.50 is a decent purchase, but I'm not spending any more money on this sale. Maybe there will be a Christmas sale. Legend of Bumbo, we heard there was going to be some extra DLC on that, so there would be an argument to getting that, but it's probably never going to be on sale. Unfortunately, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order went nowhere, but I'm basically on all the Star Wars games anyways, so I'd get it. Shanti and the Seven Sirens, definitely want that. Mirror's Edge Catalyst for $5 is probably about as good as you're going to get it. It's a game like this in particular is a hard justification in the sense that legitimately it's kind of ridiculous for it to be less than $5, but also it's such an old game that it's kind of hard to pay much more than $5 for it, particularly in all of the competition. Some more Star Wars games, Cyberpunk 2077, Nier Automata. That's another game that I wish was much more discounted, but it isn't. You really have to wait 4 or 5 to 10 years before a game starts going down in price for a lot of companies, if they ever go down in price. $3.99 for Bulletstorm Full Clip Edition is a good deal if you don't have the original game. It's still kind of a bad deal as an upgrade fee for it. Let's see, Galgun 2. They're going to release a remake of Galgun. I would like Shadow of the Tomb Raider Definitive Edition, because then that lets me finish the the Tomb Raider series. Valkyrie Chronicles I'm not sure about. Some Lego games that they're selling at $9.99, but then you have to get the DLC probably to get all the characters. So I guess if you don't care about the characters and don't get the DLC, that's fine. But then also sometimes the DLC gives you levels and content, actual content. The 2 Bloodstained Moon, the 8-bit one, and the regular game. Decent price probably for both. If you were just, yeah, if I was just buying games, this would have been a good one to have gotten. Where Darksiders 3, probably going to be another $5 cheaper fairly quickly next time there's a sale. Shadow War, all the multiplayer stuff is stopping. Global Space Program, all the programmers left that game, and it's been incredibly slow to work on a sequel or update it after the first couple of years. War for the Overworld at $2.99 is a decent price. We start getting into like Final Fantasy things, and We Happy Few is a hard one to justify even if it were $5. And see, that's 85% off, and it's still kind of hard to justify knowing how the game is pretty bad in its play style. Labyrinth of Refrain, I believe, is a dungeon crawler, so I'd have to think about that. I'm not sure I'm going any further with the Assassin's Creed series. I may very well have just succeeded in covering the best parts of Assassin's Creed in my mind, which was the first 2 assassin characters, the first 4 games as it were, and then just ignore the rest of the series, which is very different. I played the first one of these, so I want to cover the second one. I've never played Thongs of Virtue. I was gifted Fallout 4 and have yet to get around it, but not the DLC. I'd like Star Trek Bridge Crew, but I wouldn't be able to do anything with it. So that's it. Pretty much impossible to justify purchase. Samurai Warriors, Monster Hunter World. Some of these games now, once you start getting into the 100 position, stop really being guaranteed winners as far as things that I want. Also, some of them just also clearly would need more organization. There's no button here to go all the way to the top, so either I'd have to type in some numbers or I'd have to drag it, and both of those would be too time intensive to actually do. Resident Evil 2, $15.99. Killer 7 is historically relevant, so I want to play that. Here we have Fallout 4 content separated out instead of as a season pass, which I would hope that the season pass gives you both of that, but you can also see in the DLC that the significant portion of this is not well received. Binding of Isaac Afterbirth, the Blob. I didn't buy the Blob one. Probably not gonna ever want to play Life is Strange Before the Storm. At a certain point, some of these games, once we're getting close to 150th point, they're more like, well, if somebody wants to see me play it, I'm willing to play it more than I want to play it. But then you also have like Princess Maker 2 Refine here that is historically accurate, and I would like to own that on my Steam account. Galgun Double Piece for $5.99 is a decent price, but then there's a ton of DLC, at least on the first Galgun game, which I don't know if Double Piece is the first game or the second game or possibly a third game. I think there was a Switch third game. Hard to justify Onichamba Z2 Chaos since there's no other Onichamba games on Steam. I'd like to play Stasis, but it's often too pricey. I'd like to play all the Trine games, even the bad one. I don't even know what Lemma is. This Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate is a spin-off game that is mixed reviewed of the Arkham series and probably not really worth playing. Same is true for Escape Dead Island as a spin-off game that's not probably worth. Probably is true also for Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City. Blades of Time, I recall the first time I bought this game and maybe never played it, I probably paid less than $5 for it back in 2012. Well, I would have thought that It actually came out much earlier than that. Maybe it came to Steam in 2012. Don't have Fallout 3 Game of the Year edition. Do want to get that at some point. Watch Dogs 1 is questionable. Homesick, I do want to play, but it's never priced reasonably. Ergami here is $3.99. I think it might have some DLC. Salt and Sanctuary Tabletop Simulator. I didn't get around to buying that. Several Assassin's Creed games, you can tell. Akiba's Trip. This one might eventually get down to a reasonable price on a sale. At this point, like 5 years later. But then you also have like Dark Dreams Don't Die. That's 5 years old game, and it's not discounted at all. Let's see. It's questionable whether you really need to buy the definitive edition of Dead Island when the original version is potentially better. I want to own the Mega Man games, but I might very well have a lot of trouble playing any of them since I've never played them before. Here we have some mixed games that I kind of overruled as far as whether it should be on the wish list or not. Fury, I want to play that. That could be a finger mashing mess. Decent argument to play Origins. Yeah, inherently, I think that would be the way to get back on track with the Assassin's Creed series, is to get Black Flag and play Black Flag and just skip over the events of Assassin's Creed 3. Then skip over everything after Black Flag all the way to Origins. And then catch up that way. More of the Princess Maker games. Marvel Superheroes 2. This is $4.99, but this is another one of those games that was like really full of DLC and characters. This Dresden game, I want to own it. I don't think it has a lot of relevance. I don't think it ever really did. A lot of Sinrin Kagura things. My Lovely Daughter is one of those weird games. It might still be worked on. Dead Cells I should play. Relevant enough. Cypher. Lust for Darkness is hard to justify, you can tell, because I had both of these games, Cypher and Lust for Darkness, in my shopping cart when I purchased for the sale, and I removed Cypher because it's basically a education walking through a museum talking about encryption, which is interesting to me and probably no one else. And then Lust for Darkness is just nudity and Cthulhu-esque horror, and it just wouldn't be able to have any footage on YouTube. So hard to justify something like that. Hard to justify like the season pass for QUBE 2 because it gives you some puzzle packs, but I wasn't really in the mood to play more of that, particularly for $10 more. These games are like 2-player games, or mostly 2-player games, so getting Carcassonne is hard to justify. Also, almost never on sale. Getting something like Battle Chess, which it says this came out in 2017, that's not accurate at all. $4.99 is still a little expensive. A lot of Darkest Dungeon DLC, which has been a stumbling point as far as me covering Darkest Dungeon, is I tend to want all the DLC, which means spend another $5 or so. I haven't ever committed to really playing any of the GTA games, but I'd like to own them. They're historically relevant. Same is true for a lot of the arcade series games. See, that gets to about 250 games out of probably about 500. The season pass for Cluedo I'd like to own, but it's far too expensive for what you're getting. And the game is a big ripoff anyways. I have this ambition always to play these like Korean horror games And honestly, I don't think I've actually played any Japanese horror game or Korean horror game or Asian horror game in general on my channel at all. I've somehow just been ambitious around it, but not gotten around to actually doing it. Dishonored Death of the Outsider. I believe I did buy Dishonored 2 and chose not to buy both. Dragon Ball Z Fighter Z is interesting, but then a bunch of characters. Dragon's Lair. I want these 3 games, but they're too expensive once again at $5 each. They're definitely historically relevant, but also not really worth $5. Golem, another one I overruled, even though it's poorly reviewed. Hand of Fate 2. I'd be willing to play that. We're getting almost to the point where the reviewed games stop really making sense. Earthworm Jim, somewhat relevant, but then there's controversy around the creator somewhat, and that and the game itself isn't that interesting. If I was ever to get Witcher 3, then I'd like to get the DLC, which I've never played for Witcher 3 on Steam. Kami, Opus Magnum. This is probably the most niche game I have. We Know the Devil is a visual novel for $3.99. It's questionable whether playing Psychopath's Mandatory Happiness makes sense now, since that anime is fairly old and forgotten about, as animes tend to be. Resident Evil 7, $10, good deal. Season Pass, another $11. See how they get you. You end up spending $20 when you thought you were only going to spend $10. True is also for Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil Remake, although I don't know if there actually is DLC for Resident Evil 0 or Resident Evil Remake. Shadow Hand for $3.79 is not terrible. Slime Rancher, super hot games. You can see they're not on the highest priority by any means. Baconing is the 3rd game in the Death Spank series, I believe. Got some weirder games like The Bunker and The Infectious Madness of Dr. Decker. And you've got questionable games like Final Fantasy VII. Want to play Spectrum Retreat. It's kind of a puzzle game. Although, in all fairness, it's always a coin flip as far as those kind of games. It's hard to justify playing Visceral Cleanup Crew, particularly if I would be just playing it by myself, which is more than likely the case. That is definitely a case of a game, Visceral Cleanup Crew, where collabs really are the only way that something like that works. And I was, over my career of being a failed YouTuber, I've only been asked to collab by people maybe 2 or 3 times, and they were like public and asks. And I was just like, nah, I don't have time for that, and I don't play multiplayer games. I kind of wonder if perhaps I should have taken them up on that offer and been more sociable. Yeah, at 325, you're definitely seeing now games it's not like the second half of this list is games that I don't want to play by any means, but they aren't games that likely have even been thought about or put at the top of the list for a while. The list becomes very, very much less oriented and less sorted as we get down further. Like the Far Cry series is a question there, the Hitman series is a question there. Do I want to continue to get Nancy Drew games when I haven't managed to play any of the other Nancy Drew games? Same is probably true for the Batman games. At a certain point, I need to hunker down and play more games to justify continuing to build the collection up. Fable Anniversary Edition certainly is an interesting point here. Is the Steam Link is still labeled as coming soon, whereas the Steam controller was labeled as discontinued, and I removed it off my wish list. Here you have like Starfleet Academy, which is an old Star Trek game. On Far Cry, maybe you just play Far Cry Primal and you don't play anything else. This is like the only musical album I have for the entire wish list, I believe. The music from the Cat Lady, which I really did like that music in the game. Hard to justify playing any of the Five Nights at Freddy's games at this point. Hard to justify playing Kitty Powers Matchmaker, but maybe for a laugh. Let's see, is there anything? A lot of these are just really, really old games that are filling in gaps. Like Alien vs. Predator Classics 2000. Probably a game that I would never play, but I would like to own, just in case. But yeah, this definitely is getting down to the bottom. Like these Fallout original games are very difficult to even imagine that you'd actually play. A lot of these are point and click adventures that I've got plenty of those. What's funny is looking at my wish list gives me the feeling that I have a lot of games, and then looking at my games library gives me a feeling that I don't have that many games. Here we have almost gone full circle in the fact that this is Doom 3 BFG edition versus Doom 3, and I'm not sure which version actually, if not both, you need to own or play to compare the two. Maybe you don't need to own or play either one of them, frankly. Let's see, we're at like 553, and the list at this point is totally not sorted at all. There's definitely some games here that I could potentially whittle down and say, yeah, forget it, and just never own them, never play them. But at a certain point, if I'm so desperate and the finances have just gone bankrupt as far as buying games, there's no point in removing things from the wish list at all. It's just don't look at the wish list and don't look at sales and just don't buy anything. Yeah, definitely a lot of games here that I'm starting to see that aren't even recognizable as we hit about 700. So let's go to 700 as a way of just saying we looked at the first 700 games on a wish list that probably has about 1,000 games on it, on an account that has probably 2,000 or 3,000 games. And so let's just scroll all the way down here. We've got the numbers have overflowed at the bottom, so it just says 0, which implies to me that the wish list really can only have like 1,024 as a number, which seems like a unnecessary limit in particular. So I'm gonna try and scroll back up. Yeah, 1,024 is not a 64-bit number by any meaning, and 8-bit number would be 255 as the maximum number with 0. But not as many adult games as I would have thought in that first 500, by the way, which definitely goes to show that a lot of the adult games have been added either later or just are not high priority. I don't feel like I've ever actually gone through this and sorted a lot of this in any way, because there's kind of no reason to have a ranked order, as it were. It's just easier to see what's at discount and shop that way and filter by that sorting method. What's the cheapest game and what's at discount, what's the most discounted, makes for a much better system than a priorities list. I guess if money was no object and it was simply a matter of you can only buy so many games based on how many games you've finished, at that point you might have a much higher curated list. In a lot of ways, the wish list on Steam feels a lot like the wish lists of anime DVDs I once had back when I was a younger anime fan. Which, yeah, there's definitely a lot of things, had I gotten them, that would have probably been interesting to watch or kind of rare to find. I'm gonna scroll up to the point where we see a number, and then I'm gonna call it a day. Here's the one where the girls are tied up and you're basically kidnapping the girls. Mostly positive. To kidnap these possessed girls and tie them up to free them of their evil spirits is the theoretical story there. I'm a little surprised that game never caused any controversy or got pulled from Steam. At a certain level, I guess that might be a sign of things getting a lot better. Here's animation throwdown of a bunch of Fox cartoons, but a lot of these would be really old Fox cartoons at this point. And it's a card game, which I'm not sure that many people would be interested in that. Here you have like a game like Ape Out that I could easily see myself numbering that so it was a bit higher. That would be about the only way I could fix this, is I'd have to click on all of these and just hit the number 1 and then hit the number 1 and then hit the number 1 over and over again to just stick it to the top. Yeah. In a funny way, I guess when you have situations like we've had in 2020, just more important bits of information and more important news, I guess at a certain level it stops being as big of a deal if some video game somewhere is not to your liking. See, this is weird. So it goes from 243 to 0, which would indicate that it is somehow calculating 255, an 8-bit number, and then it just flips it as an overflow around to a 0, which 255 for a video game wishlist on Steam is a bit of a limitation, I would say. Also, if this is 255 to this point, then that implies to me that there actually isn't even 1,000 games here. Wow. I'm a little surprised by that. Like, I would have almost certainly said that there was at least 1,000 games on the wish list. I almost certainly would tell you I have that much on the library, but maybe I am closer to a complete collection than I thought. Let's see. don't know if I can actually see all the games. No, I don't really have a way of seeing like the total amount. And suppose we can point out here that, yeah, the interface here is not particularly great. Like a little bit of organization with the library update, certainly, but not a great organization here. Not worth going. Like, I have a dynamic list for installed locally. I have the playing list, which is 146 games that I want to play next. We have a 400 game list of series done, 5 game list of games that I've finished but maybe want to go back and get 100% achievements. Probably never do that. 1 game that's broken and I'm waiting for Scum VM. And then amongst these lists there might be the same game listed several times, but as far as some automated sorting, we have some genre stuff that breaks down a lot of these games. You can see, well, I have 21 adventure games, I have 87 point and clicks and 46 puzzles, and then considerably less as far as massive multiplayers. I'm surprised I even have 2, or sports games. Shooters are always going to be high at 54, RPGs at 55. Then we have different categories that I specifically made, like Star Wars games and uplink games. Then I probably used a second sorter that started tagging things. Not really seeing as many games as you would have thought, though. 23 AAA games, 21 Disney games, 21 early access games, which I wouldn't be surprised if all of those are not early access anymore. 28 free-to-play games, 41 games I got for free, 56 Halloween games, 4 Lego games, 2 Myst games. As I play these games, I take them out of these categories and put them in the series done collection. Need a co-op partner, needs DLC for 2 games. 21 games that are just generally so old that you probably never play them. 9 party games. 1 that we played an update version for. 3 more point and clicks. 9 that I probably will never play. 7 puzzle games. And 14 games I might replay even though I've already done a series on them. 1 shooter, 1 XCOM, and then 26 adult games under XXX. So that really does kind of imply that the numbers are smaller than I thought. I might have just been exaggerating numbers in general. Alright, well, through that waste of time, I've now gotten to 2 hours and 40 minutes, and if anything, that was just a mental relaxation effort of therapeutic shopping without actually shopping. I am extremely happy to say that there has been only 1 frame rendered dropped because of lag, and there has been only 807 frames dropped because of network, which is 0.1% of the total number of frames, which is 570,000 frames, basically, rounding. So I have fixed the streaming issue. Maybe that'll get me some more views, some happier viewers in the future. And yeah, there's nothing else to talk about, so that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me either a gift card or a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.